As AI generated content becomes all the more common, and the ability for us to determine what is and what is not AI generated versus human generated becomes increasingly difficult because the AI generated stuff is just getting way more advanced. People are searching high and low for easy telltale signs for how we can say that right there, that's AI generated. That right there, that text, that came from an AI chatbot. We want to be able to discern those sorts of things because none of us want to be consuming AI generated content unknowingly. Like if it's a joke and we're creating some AI content because it's funny and it's weird to watch Will Smith eat some spaghetti. Okay, we all like that. That's a lot of fun. But unknowingly, no, we don't like that at all. And so we're looking for those signs that, like when Will Smith is going to eat spaghetti in those videos of early AI videos from like last year and the year before, where it looks ridiculous because he's eating like a giant like mountain of spaghetti noodles. We want to be able to pinpoint it and say that's AI generated. That person has way too many fingers. It's AI generated. And when it comes to AI text, the current way that people are thinking that they can determine if text is AI generated or not is through the use of what's called an M dash. Now, an M dash is basically a long hyphen. It's a long hyphen. It's called an M dash because it's roughly the width of a capital M. That's just what it is. It's been in use for years and years and years, literally centuries. For about 5 centuries, about 500 years. And I want to say flat out, no. Usage of an M dash as a piece of punctuation does not indicate AI generated text. In fact, some of the most renowned writers and authors of our time and generations past, from journalists to classic works of literature authors to even modern sci-fi authors, have made in some cases prolific uses of the M dash. J.R.R. Tolkien used the M dash. Mark Twain was using the M dash. Piers Anthony used the M dash. Robert Heinlein used the M dash. On and on and on. It's hard to find an author who loves the words, that has written any significant number of works that hasn't used at least occasionally an M dash. And all of these AI chatbots and LLM systems out there are trained on all of those works, right? We're talking a huge pile of award-winning, highly renowned works of journalism from 100 years ago, or even 200 years ago. We're talking about some of the biggest works of classic literature, like The Lord of the Rings, of the last century or two. All of them have an M dash somewhere in them. In fact, some of those authors use M dash all the friggin' time. You might even make a point that they overuse the M dash. There's an author who goes by the name of David Gerald, who you may remember him as writing the Trouble with Tribbles episode of Star Trek. Well, he's a sci-fi author, written a large number of sci-fi books, and his books are filled with, I swear to heavens, more M dashes than periods sometimes. You might say, well, he's using too many M dashes. Reasonable critique. However, it was not AI generated because he wrote most of those books in the 1970s and 80s. So when you point out the great number, I use M dashes regularly. Why do I use M dashes? Because I read a lot of books. People who read a lot of books use a lot of M dashes. This is just a common thing. I've studied a great number of different authors, including Tolkien and many others, and a great number of different attempts at typesetting those works. And because of that, over the years, I've grown fond of at least the occasional usage of the M dash. It's a very fun and reasonable thing to use. If you look through the Lunduke Journal articles, you'll find M dashes going back to, well, the last 20 years at least. So using an M dash to determine whether or not something is AI generated doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense any more than an ellipses or a colon or an exclamation point or a question mark. It doesn't make any sense at all. In fact, if people are so boisterously committed to pointing out, aha, I see an M dash, that means it's AI generated, that's just betraying that that person hasn't read a lot of classic literature or modern sci-fi or classic sci-fi or articles. like don't throw yourself under the bus like that. Don't tell everyone that you haven't read a whole lot of things, because if you're out there saying an M dash means AI, that's all it means, because it definitely doesn't mean AI. The reality is, and this sucks, this really sucks, but the reality is that AI is getting really good at mimicking people when they want it to, because it's trained off of such a huge mountain of data, which means it's becoming increasingly difficult, almost by the day, more and more difficult, to determine what is and is not AI driven. And that really sucks. That's a bad thing for us as humans, because increasingly it's becoming impossible to tell what is or is not a person on the internet. It's not just that picture generation is getting better or voice synthesis is getting better. And boy, howdy, is it ever. I've had people send me MP3s of Lunduke, not really Lunduke, but Lunduke, saying all manner of different things. Because there's so much of my voice out there, there's such a mountain of podcasts that they can use to train an AI system on. It's very easy to mimic a Lunduke. You can have Lunduke say all sorts of crazy things, and it sounds like it might be a real Lunduke. It's getting better and better and better. And the reality is we are very, very close to being able to synthesize the writing style of a Lunduke, the voice mannerisms and sound of a Lunduke, the picture of a Lunduke, and even the articles themselves could be generated by AI. Most tech news journalists, most tech news outlets are publishing the majority of their content AI generated now. The articles you read from journalists on tech news outlets are by and large, better than even odds, not written by a human being. They don't advertise that, not usually. CNET did a thing recently, this last year, where they kind of admitted to doing some of that AI generated, but most of them are staying kind of quiet about it because it lets them pump out more articles, right? And really crank them out in large numbers. They make up for quality with quantity of AI generated content in order to increase their ad revenue. And people aren't really noticing. I mean, people are noticing, but people aren't caring. And then they're not stopping. And the usage of an M dash, maybe an AI generated text will include an M dash. Maybe it won't. But that's not a good indication. In fact, there isn't a good indication. I don't want to poo-poo on people for not being able to tell, but you can't tell most of the time. If it's a decent AI model and it's trained against a reasonably large set of data, you can't really tell anymore. It sucks. It really sucks. I want to be able to come out and say the AI is so bad, we can laugh at it and point at it and we all know when it's there and we can avoid it, but you can't. You can't anymore. Certainly not with the text content, not if they do their jobs right. And many of them are. And all across social media, there's bots galore. And some of us are like, man, I suspect that's a bot. But then again, some of the real people out there kind of act like bots. So it's kind of hard to friggin' tell. An M dash and an ellipses. Neither of those help at all. So anyway, I wanted to put this out there because AI cannot have the M dash. It's mine. I'm calling dibs right now. I'm taking it back. Yeah, it doesn't fly. It's mine. And I also would like to point something out here. And I think this is one of the only Not foolproof, but indicative ways where us, as consumers, as viewers, as readers, can start to tell when something is or is not AI generated. And that's quantity. You may notice with the Lunduke Journal, for one person, I may put out a fair bit of stuff, right? Over the course of a week, I'll produce, let's say, 6 shows and maybe a handful of poster articles. But that's limited right there, right? And you're like, okay, if I was AI generated, I could have pumped out 10 times that number. Easy. And when you go to look at some of the big tech news sites, you start to see 10 times that number. A lot of times without a name associated to the articles. Red flag. Or the name will be staff or someone you've never heard of before and doesn't seem to have a social media presence. Red flag. Doesn't mean for sure that an article is or is not written by AI, because again, sometimes it's just really hard to tell. But those red flags are worth watching. But when you can say, okay, this person seems like a legit person, they've been around a long time, and they produce a limited subset of content, and there's flubs in them, and there's no edits in the videos or audio podcasts, that starts to tell you, okay, maybe this is real. This is a human. These are ways we can start to tell. M- doesn't help. Thank you to the Lunduke Journal subscribers for allowing me to produce this boutique, artisanal, human-created, whatever it is that I'm doing right now. Tech journalism, that's the word. That's another way to tell, is when they make mistakes. Real mistakes. Thank you again to all the subscribers who make it possible. Go to lunduke.com and click on a bunch of links. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.